Lilui Nishmas, Naomi Bas Yaakov. The verse tells us, Haloi alki ein Eloi hai bekirbi matsuni haroi sa'ele. Terminology means, is it not because God is not bekirbi, amongst me, within me, matsuni haroi sa'ele. I found all of these negative things transpire. So listen to what Rabbi Nosson says. He says like this: Shekol harois v'atzoros, all negativity, all affliction, chas v'shalom, nimshachim achmas she'ein margishim Hashem yisbarach sheshoichem mikirbeinu. The only reason why a person feels afflicted and feels in a sense of pain is because they don't have an awareness that Hashem is shoichem mikirbeinu, dwells within us. When a person loses the awareness that Hashem is dwelling within you and is present in your life now, you experience pain. Mashkiach aleinu tamid. And not only that, we also get confused about what transpires in our lives. We don't know why it's happening, how it's happening. We feel it's random. But if a person realizes, number one, that Hashem is dwelling within you now, and not only that, in your life, all of the circumstances that are occurring are also perfectly organized and orchestrated by Hashem, then they feel a sense of deep affliction and pain. Dahainu pagam emunah, which is essentially all linked to one thing, and that is a lack of emunah. Now, what's interesting is emunah is not only, faith is not only a recognition that what is happening in my life is meant to be happening. Faith is a recognition that in me right now, Hashem dwells. In me and in my circumstances and in my surrounding environment, Hashem is. Shepagam ze nimshach machmas arichuk me'atzadik me'eretz Yisrael. K'mevor befinim. Ki kol hatzor sheboilam rachmana l'islam mishal metoika v'galus b'amenaseina harabim. He says all of this stems from being distant from the land of Israel and being distant from the righteous individual, which is referred to as a sense of galus, which is referred to a sense of exile. Again, the Gemara tells us in Soita, once the temple was destroyed, there has not been one day that the affliction has become worse than the previous. What does that mean? I mean, sometimes it feels like it's a better day. Since the temple was destroyed, not one day became better than the previous. And what he's saying like this is that exile is not geographical. Exile is not that we don't live in the state of Israel or we live in Israel itself. Exile is being distant from the recognition that Hashem dwells in you. Anytime you fall away from that recognition and that you lack the sensitivity that Hashem is present in your life right now and inside of you and is orchestrating every single thing right now, that's called exile. Because the That's why all of the miracles stem within the land of Israel. That's why even if there's a miracle that one needs to sing Hallel for, it has to happen for all the Jewish people, and it has to happen in its association with Eretz Yisrael, with the land of Israel. Why? Because from there's a recognition, firstly, of the creation of the world, which started from that space. And secondly, it's a recognition of Hashem's presence and constant engagement with your life. Because they nimshach machmas arichuk mitzadike emes. Shali dezer rechoikim meretz Yisrael b'chlal b'frat. Ki ika ikav. Now he's saying like this. Listen to this. He keeps on making reference to being distant from a tzaddik. What's a tzaddik? A righteous person. What does it mean to be distant from a tzaddik? So, what we see here is that to be around people that have a sensitivity of Hashem. And we have the potent experience of a tzaddik, a righteous individual, that is so deeply conscious and deeply present and deeply seated in awareness of Hashem being in their life. To have that experience and that echoed experience together with that individual, to see such a person is of unbelievable importance and proportions. But on a very simple level, if you understand what a tzibur is, if you understand what a community is, we say that a person who davens in an environment together with other Jews, it's as if they're a tzaddik. It's as if their tefillos, if they daven by themselves, aren't accepted. Why are they not accepted? Because Hashem points out all of the elements that aren't perfect. When a person's together with other human beings that are all trying, it says that they're held up to the level of a tzaddik, to the level of a righteous person. How does that work?
The converse is also true.
The what?
The tzaddik doesn't necessarily get answers unless he's also part of the
right.
Yes.
You need to have that connection together. Now, why is that? The reason for that is the following. It's being in the space where people have a frequency of consciousness of Hashem and consciousness of God in their life and in the world around them and in their lives around them. And if you go out into the world out there alone is a world of, what is it, cat eat dog? Yeah? There's a world where an individual is constantly in a state of fight, in conflict, having to preserve the self. But to be in an environment where there's a resonance and there's a frequency that is lifted up of consciousness of Hashem called Emunah is what we refer to as redemption, is what we have referred to as living outside of the exile, not within exile. And that's why he says here, V'zeo ma'alivim ha'malachei Elokim ha'ta'im b'neviyah ksiv ha'tzadik avad ve'ein ish sam al leiv ha'anshei chesed nesofim bein meivin. When the tzaddik dies, it says in Yeshaya, then people's consciousness of the heart is lost and they are unable to understand where everything comes from. Everyone needs very much to find the tzaddik. They need to find the righteous individual. But again, not only do they need a person to look up to and engage with, they need to find the tzaddik in the conglomerate, in the community, that energy of togetherness, which is referred to as the tzaddik. And they need to find the tzaddik inside of themselves, the tzaddik that is able to have that awareness. He says, this is the main purpose of life. The main purpose of life is to fix up this state of consciousness where you're feeling worried, you're feeling empty, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling detached, you're feeling confused. That's called exile. And our job is to remove ourselves from the exile and come into the state of redemption and come into the state of connection. And that is what we have to fix inside of ourselves by, number one, the environment that we place ourselves into, the connections with people that are in that state that we have, and same to our relationship within ourselves in terms of our consciousness. He says, but it needs something called chippus. Chippus means you need to be on the prowl and you need to search. This energy is something that's hidden. It is not what is being taught outside in the world. It is not what is being given over for free. It is something that needs work and it's something that needs conscious attention to be able to develop. If you think about it, what does it mean to be in exile? You know, there were tzaddikim, there were certain righteous individuals, the Vilna Gaon was one of them, that would put themselves in self-inflicted exile. They would take themselves and put themselves in an environment where no one knew them, where it was completely foreign, and they would just be navanad, like as it says by Cain. They would just walk without knowing where they were going. and feel like completely, it's a very hectic affliction to not feel. I remember experiencing this once in Singapore, where we missed our flight, or not missed our flight, we had an issue with our flight because of the passports, and we couldn't get onto the flight. And our accommodation was out, so we didn't have a place to stay. To get kosher food there, we were out of kosher food, and we had 2 kids with us.
Not bad.
So we ended up going to Chabad, and there was a restaurant there that we were hoping we could get some food from. That was the only kosher place. They had closed the restaurant because there was a function of one of the most prominent families there in Singapore, Jewish families, and they'd closed the whole restaurant because they were catering for this function. So we couldn't even get. So we ended up gate crashing this thing. We felt like, some, immigrants, like sitting there at the corner trying to chap from the meal. But you feel a sense of nav and nad. You feel like a sense of complete, disengaged, disenfranchised space. Very unpleasant feeling. And if you think about it, that's the feeling that we're trying to mitigate in our own lives. That's the feeling that we want to try and remove ourselves, even in our own homes or bodies or daily activity. Sometimes a person can feel, God forbid, like they're in a state of exile. They're in a state of navenad, in a state where they have no idea what's going on. And the only way to anchor themselves is through emunah. It's the only way to find the tzaddik, is to find the Eretz Yisrael, is to find that stability that is implicit in a mindset of understanding that Hashem dwells inside of you, is in your life right now, and everything that's happening is exactly according to Hashem's will. ואין יודע בעצמו מה הוא מבקש ומחפש, כמו שרואים כל זה בחוש מי שמביט בעין האמס, שרואה בני אדם רואה ומחמן ומגיע בגדול ותרך. He says unbelievably. Listen to this as we come nearer to the conclusion. He says, not only is it in a feeling that you don't know where you're going, but you are chasing things that have no purpose. And you feel like, gosh, I'm going to chase this. I want this to manifest. I want this to happen. And then what happens? It manifests and you get it. And then what ends up happening? You start chasing another thing. And you don't know what you're chasing. You don't know what you're going for. You don't know what you're experiencing. You don't know what's happening. And that's the experience that people you see are living there, or you can say an excuse for living their lives. And a person can never fill themselves with their aspect of money and achievement.
Isn't that the ideal in your Yiddishkeit also, that you shouldn't feel full by whatever you are? It's trying to put a juxtaposition, but truly that's how you meant to feel like your Yiddishkeit, that it's not enough.
I think that the experience within Yiddishkeit is that a person needs to feel full and centered internally by virtue of understanding that Hashem dwells within them and there's an infinite experience of self, and they have to understand and feel comfortable in the environment. But it's not a preclusion to striving for more, and it's not a preclusion for growing into more. If you think about a mayan is a fountain, and a fountain flows from within. But what happens is, if it carries on flowing, it fills itself, it starts overpouring, and it pours out into the environment around. And that's the experience that I hear that a lot of people within their Judaism feel constantly a sense of not enough, not good enough, I need to do more, I'm not connected enough. There's positivity, there's also great danger in not realizing that Hashem doesn't want us to dwell in exile. Hashem wants us to dwell within the land of Israel, within a state of stability and within an innate sense of tranquility. From that tranquility and serenity and fullness, does a person actually end up doing more? If you think about any environment that you're in, that you need to be creative or you need to achieve something, when do you achieve more? When you're in a state where you feel calm, where you feel a sense of safety, or when you're in a state of flux and in a state of fear. So Hashem wants us to be in a state of calm and safety, and then from that space to flow into a state of more. And that's how it ends off here. Nimtza shelo elam ein mamali tavasa v'shoya v'royref v'doyresh מבקש מחפש אחר הממן לעולם, כאילו מחויב ומשובד איזה שר מוישה לחפש לבקש איזה דבר. Unbelievable. He says the highest state of exile is a person that is chasing money, that leaves the shir and goes off to work. To be in a state where a person never feels like they have enough. They have to constantly add to that figure, to that amount, to what they're doing, and that's almost like their God. That's their deity. Because the unfortunate reality is until the day of death, a person is chasing within that world. So then what are you achieving? If you never feel like you have enough in that world, what are you ever achieving? They say, no, I do it for my children. He says, how do you know? How do you know that your kids, it's going to go into a whole argument around it, which we won't go into. But what we are saying here is the following, my friends, that our role, especially during this period of time, is not only on a micro level to evaluate our activity and say, you know what, Hashem, we need to do better in our mitzvahs, we need to do better in our learning of Torah, we need to do better in our observance. Of course, those are all the details. But the macro picture is our ideology and our mindset and our consciousness. And that is, do we have an awareness, do we have emunah of the tzaddik, the righteous one that lives inside of us, that is around us, that dwells within our space of existence? Do we see Hashem in our lives right now, dwelling inside of us and managing everything in our lives? Once we come to that sensitivity, then please God, a person will experience immense bracha, immense tranquility, and immense growth.